All right, ladies and gentlemen, it is your favorite Dark Sorcerer here. And today I want to do a video on the do's and don'ts of cursing. Basically, the when and how to go about doing it. So, first off, I find it interesting that so many people think of me as this guy that goes around cursing for just shits and giggles. I fucking love it. Yeah, I mean, what's that old expression by Patrick Swayze from Roadhouse? Opinions vary. Hilarious. Gotta love it. Everybody has an opinion, so it's basically like saying everybody has assholes. Opinions vary. You know, so it is kind of funny on how many people assume that something's going on without actually doing their own homework. Okay, for an example, out of 32 years, I've cursed maybe 8 people. 8 people. That's out of 32 years. Okay. People who've done me or my family harm. People who have made it personal. Okay. 32 years. About 8 people. And it's funny. I've had customers come to me and ask me, pay me to curse people. I've had people come to me and pay me to do hexes and jinxes on their enemies. But that's just the extent of it. you know, I don't go around cursing just for shits and giggles. I don't waste my curses, or the hexes or anything on just anybody. They've got to do something seriously fucked up for me to sit there and go, okay, I'm done fucking around with you. Your ass is toast. Okay. And it's interesting because after a year, an old enemy has risen his ugly head again. Obviously didn't learn from all the other people that have he's fucked with. You know, obviously that's right up front. And my name once again has transgressed his lips. Okay. Not once, but twice within the last week. Had somebody come to me and say, an old friend is up to his old tricks again. It's like, and who would that be? I've seen a lot of people that I've had disagreements with over the years rise and fall. Okay, they've come and gone just as quick. About 9 times out of 10, it's due to popularity or testing the waters to see if it's safe to continue. Other times, it's I need money, so I gotta stick my head and see, are people still pissed at me, type thing. See, that's what this encounter was. And it's, in my opinion, that's exactly what it is. It's attention seeking. It's about this because he started, how should I say this, putting his propaganda out there again, which tells me things at home are not going too good for him. Okay. And that's the funny part. So I made a post today on Facebook and a couple of groups. And an individual jumped on. Never had any dealings with this individual. I'm not friends with this individual under any circumstances. I don't even know who the hell this person is. Okay. And this person brings up this old adversary. Okay. Just brings them up out of the blue underneath this post. It had nothing to do with this old adversary. Okay. And I found it interesting because the fact that he still mocks you on a regular basis, despite all that you claim to have done to him, that I've claimed to done to him? Wow. Let's see. I did one video exposing his lies. I've proven him wrong with actual evidence. And on top of that, his own words defeated him. Okay. So all that I've done to this individual, okay. The individual who posted this, is a good little clip about like so. I'm not going to go into the names or anything like that, but this individual I found is quite funny because of the fact that first, this individual is claiming that I've done a lot to this old adversary, but at the same time, kissing my ass, stating, on how intelligent I am, how intelligent and well read I am. Okay. Found that very interesting. And then you have this other guy, a guy that I've been friends with for how long is I want to say it's been like 5, maybe 6 years, who typed on and, basically spewed his little 2 cents. It's all good, you know. But here's the thing: when it comes to baneful sorcery, not everything is magical. Okay, that's the first thing you got to understand. The art of cognitive warfare is not a magical one all the time. I mean, sure, you can throw out a jinx to give somebody bad luck. You can give them a hex to teach them a lesson, or you can just simply remove them through baneful sorcery, such as cursing. Okay? But if you cursed everybody who pissed you off or talked smack about you, you'd be the only idiot left in the world. So you got to weigh your options. Okay? So this is basically the do's and don'ts of cursing. So I wanted to give you this little kind of a backdrop too. So take this old adversary for an example. He attacked me for over 6 months. Okay, just his lies and his propaganda were so outrageous that a friend of mine literally did a background check on me and without my knowledge, and it was put forth, completely and utterly obliterating what this old adversary was saying about me. The term ha Satan, for an example, in Jewish or Hebrew, I should say, means adversary, whereas in Jewish it means accuser. Okay, so that's basically what it was. But if you actually looked at the content in the photos and everything being put forth, it's not even the same guy, okay, that this guy is looking up, all right, and claiming to be all this material bad guy. So, it's kind of funny. So it's like everybody's assuming he's attacking me. This guy's tagging me in his post, and it's like, what's that old expression in Hollywood? Public. There's no such thing as bad publicity. It's like, okay. So you see, putting his own words forth to those who came to me, that's defeating him. Okay, because they're reading his own words. They're looking at him through my dealings with him. Because number one, you have his words, my words. Nowhere in the post have I ever attacked him. Nowhere in my comments or posts have I ever cursed him. Okay. The fact that people assume that I've been cursing him for the better part of a year, whatever, that's your own idiocy on that one. So if you curse somebody, they'd be dead, especially if you're, you know, an elder in the occult community. those who are ordained ministers, for an example. You've earned that statue. You've earned that right. You're not a part of the mundane idiocy, hypocrisy, and duality of drama. Okay? You basically moved on into that whole spiritual and magical aspect. Okay? Now, if we talk E.A. Koetting, for example, this is also somebody that this individual has attacked in the past. He wrote a book called Baneful Sorcery. Okay? And I actually watched his this video last night. Okay? And, and I was just sitting there listening to him, and it got me thinking because of the fact that, number one, he is correct. There's not much information out there on baneful sorcery. Not many people have actually written about baneful sorcery. Okay? Even though history has numerous proof that baneful sorcery has occurred through herbalism, okay, alchemy, poisons, for an example. Through the 16th, 17th, and 18th centuries, poison was the number one go-to thing for assassinations. You go back to the Renaissance and the Crusades, and you have the Knights of Templar. They were holy monks, and they were, warriors, highly trained warriors. You know, they were protectors of the people, much like the Druids, okay, of ancient Gaelic. But then you've also got the Hashishin, okay? These were highly adept monks. These were religious zealots, but also they were known as highly skilled assassins, okay? So, with all this power, all this money, all this finance, this popularity, what brought down their downfall? What brought down their downfall? The knights did nothing. They followed the Pope or the church rules. They had their own laws, separate from the state or the country that they were in, and yet it was the country that rose up against them. The church betrayed them. Okay, the Mongolians literally wiped out the Darkad, which are dark shamans. They wiped out the Hashishin. Okay, and this is just over the last couple, within the last 1,000 years. Okay, so it's kind of interesting to see what brought about these downfalls. They were so popular. They worked within the government. They worked within the religious and spiritual realms. So what brought down their downfall? Was it the fact that they refused to fight back, or they just rolled over and died? Okay, perhaps they thought it smart not to fight on two fronts. You know what I'm saying? But even through all this knowledge, there's no prayers, there's no curses, there's nothing, very little. You have stories of religious zealots, you have stories of warriors, warrior monks, and yet even E.A. Koetting has recognized there's not much information out there on curses, hexes, or jinxes. Even if you go into the occult world today, you have people doing all sorts of stuff. Okay, I'm talking, creating a shoebox as a how should I say this? As a coffin. They take an old shoebox, put burial dirt in it, graveyard dirt, some iron nails, an effigy, but they don't link it to a target, and then wonder, hey, why is my sorcery not working? Okay, you got people pissed off because they ended up getting their relationship ended, or their how should I say this? Their you know, wife or girlfriend decided, hey, you're not worth my time, my kids' time. You're an alcoholic. You're a drug addict. I've given you the option of quitting drugs or alcohol and being a parent, a partner. You didn't. We're going somewhere else. Okay, you have no connection to your children anymore. This is actually something that happened to this former adversary. Actually, you know, he lost his kids, lost his former partner. Now he has a kid, and yet he's still doing the same old, same old. But it's interesting to see that even his old business partner literally called him out as a con man. Clients of his have come to me and to a brother of mine and said, this is what he sent. Yeah, not a real voodooist, not a real occultist. He's just playing a part for popularity, numbers, and unfortunately, this is something that is in the community. This is a sad part of the occult community, no matter what tradition or style. However, you do have actual practitioners out there that spend all their time studying, practicing, teaching. Okay. Now, you take me for an example. Like I said, I've cursed maybe 8 people that has wronged me or my family. That's in 32 years. Okay. And yet, from what I understand from a friend of mine, is that the reason people do not engage with me is because they think that I'm going to curse them. They don't know whether I'm going to curse them or I'm going to bless them. Okay? That's a reputation. Okay? That's a good reputation to have. It means that they fear you, but at the same time they respect you as an elder. But if you're going around spreading rumors and malicious lies about somebody, guess what? Number one, your words are going to come back to haunt you. You've cursed yourself there. Okay? But at the same time, your actions, you've cursed yourself again because the community sees you for who you are. Okay? Either way, why would I add a curse onto that? Okay? Because you've already defeated yourself on all fronts. When people come to me about this individual, I just simply show them the conversations. And they're like, I'm sorry, I believe the lies about you. This guy's an idiot. Okay? and and most of the community wants nothing to do with him anyways, and yet he's still doing the same old, same old. So when we think curses, you can curse yourself. There's a little thing called the Malefictorum Dictorum. It's a self-made curse. Okay. And if you don't recognize the fact that you are placing that curse on yourself, then well, you can blame everybody until you start paying attention to yourself, because that's basically what is happening with this former adversary. Okay. He's got a self made curse. He's cursed himself, plain and simple. Okay. But yet, as individual practitioners, like I believe it was about a year ago, it was JD Temple and Orly Stewart that did a video talking about, oops, we cursed ourselves. Ironically, you'd be surprised how many people actually do that in the magical community and in reality. I'm talking the mundane world. Okay. You look at all the negativity in your life, you look at all the drama that you're associated with, and you wonder, hey, why is nothing going good with me? Okay. Number one, you're holding on to all that negativity. Your negative perception is what's defeating you. Again, the Malefictorum Dictorum. Okay. You've cursed yourself. Okay. Now, The do's and don'ts of baneful sorcery speak for itself. If you go to, say, Hecate, the Greek goddess of witchcraft, ghosts, the underworld, necromancy, and justice, and you're seeking justice, you might want to keep your nose clean because she will not discern between you as the summoner and petitioner for that baneful sorcery to be taken place and that of the target, the victim, the wrongdoer. Okay? She'll go at you as easily as them. Now, Osiris, on the other hand, this is the god of the Egyptian god of iniquity. Okay? Personally, if I do a curse, I would use these two. Number one, you're seeking justice. Number two, what better way for an opponent to bring themselves down than to use Osiris, to petition Osiris to come forth and say, hey, this individual has a lot of iniquity. Judge them, O great judge. Place them in his court. The gold versus the feather. Okay? And when you use them together, whew, that's like putting Pazuzu on the warpath. Hilarious to see the outcome of that. But there's a lot of things that a lot of people don't understand when it comes to doing baneful sorcery. A lot of people who get into baneful sorcery, they take an effigy, like, say, a cursing jar, a voodoo doll. They don't charge it properly. They don't ingest their will or their intent into it. More so, they don't bury it in a graveyard or somewhere like, say, a rotting tree, a condemned building. Place it in the river so that it cannot be found or disturbed. Okay, using things like chicken feet to ground their feet so they cannot move. Do a binding spell so they cannot harm themselves or anyone else. Things like that. But they don't connect that effigy to the target. You need something as a link that will bind them together. Okay? But not everything is a magical solution. Like I said, you've got cognitive warfare. You've got self-made curses. Hell, if you walk underneath a ladder, you give yourself bad luck, according to folklore. If you break a mirror, that's 7 years bad luck. Your typical jinxes throughout folklore. Not joking. It's there. Okay? How many times can you go into the occult world and you pick up a book that has, the ultimate book of spells? For an example, I think it was her name, Anastasia. Witchcraft was the name of the book. It's a black book with a pentagram. You know, she put in a lot of spells from the American witch to gypsy to voodoo, hoodooism, shamans, all kinds of curses for protection, for silencing somebody. But she's using Christian, Christian vocal things like Psalms, for an example. The Book of Psalms. S. Connolly wrote about this in her books. Okay. Her book on curses, for an example. That was the first time I ever came across using anything from the Christian Bible to curse somebody with. That was something I never heard before. Like using sea salt when cursing somebody with a photo. Okay. Calling on Pazuzu. Behemoth X did that. That was an interesting view for me because I did not see that. Sea salt is known for purification. It's known for cleansings. It's the purest stuff on earth. So why would you associate that with baneful sorcery? You know what I'm saying? So it's really something that was intriguing and eye-opening until I did it myself. I was hired to do a curse on somebody. I was hired to do a curse on somebody, and I decided, you know what? I'm going to give this a try. It worked so well for Behemoth X. I want to see how well it does for me. So I did this. I did a cursing jar. I put in masculine bones, smeared blood, my own blood across the photo, poked out the eyes, the mouth with iron nails, you know, rusty nails and stuff. And I put in paprika. I put in graveyard dirt, sulfur to connect it to the demons, black sand. I even urinated in it. Why? Because I wanted to degrade this individual because of what he did to my client. I wanted to teach this individual a very unforgiving lesson. Things that you do not do to your own family. Okay? So I did this. I had the circle of sea salt. I placed the cursing jar in it. I spit on it. I degraded it. I used verbal uh, words, smeared the blood, put it all in there, put it together, sealed it up with candle wax from a red candle and black candle, let it run right down over, and then I took it to the cemetery and put it in a freshly dug grave after about a week of it sitting on my altar. And throughout this entire week, this guy became paler and paler, paler. His he literally lost the lead in his pencil, so to speak. And then I buried it. This guy looks like death. He's a walking death. He's literally cursed like a mummy. And it was interesting to see because even today, the guy learned his lesson. He learned his lesson through this entire thing. But I was paid to do that. I was paid to do this to this individual. Very, very potent ritual. And my brother, Behemoth X, was right about that sea salt. So I learned something new. And that's about being an occultist. You're always learning, you're always seeking, you're always delving into the gnosis, history, mythology. The funny thing is when you get into Remy's Book of Demonolatry, chapter 1 speaks on 3 different powders. White that heals, an amber color that makes you sick, and a black powder that kills. Very, very interesting how so many of these occultists throughout the last 500 years, the last 800 years even, have spoken on this stuff. But there's very few books out there, very few topics out there that strike fear, as that is baneful sorcery. The how-tos, and the do's and don'ts. Pagans and Wiccans will look at you and say, law of 3. Now, this is something I personally have to agree with E.A. Koetting on this one, because when I curse somebody, I'm not going to have any sympathy for them. I'm not going to regret doing that rite or ritual. And I'm definitely not going to look back once I bury it, so it can rot for all time and degrade the earth, the black earth. But here's the thing. They sit there and call them the law of 3, karma. Yeah, karma's a bitch. And yes, it can happen. Karma's completely different from the threefold law of return. Do unto those who would do unto you. That is Aleister Crowley for you. The beast himself. 666. The wickedest man alive. The things that he did to himself and to others. Amazing. But if you look at things from this perspective, this scientific, ritualistic, and ceremonial perspective of these rites, they can be done in graveyards. They can be done in the woods. They can be done at a crossroads. And they can be done in your own personal altar room, your inner sanctum. Obviously, when you do curses as a group, it's going to be far more potent than an individual, a solitary practitioner. So when we think about this, I want you to think about three things. Number one, what is your intent towards this individual? Okay, the person that is doing you wrong. Okay, and why are they getting away with it? Why are so many believing the hype? And what do you want to happen to them? Okay, that's just number one. So you have jinxes, giving them bad luck, hexes, which is teaching them a lesson, and curses, which is basically baneful sorcery. You're eliminating the threat. You're eliminating that person from your way, from your personalized agenda, or for your client. Okay? Number two, knowing the intent that you have towards that individual. What type of rite are you looking to do? Okay, who are you going to use? Who are you going to use? Are you going to use the jinn? You go underneath YouTube, for an example, and you look up baneful sorcery. You're going to see everybody from Christians to practitioners. I found one that used a jinn to curse somebody. Saw a few videos by Kendall Connor. This kid, father, partner, and a black occultist, a dark magician, sorcerer. He's got a lot of knowledge. Like that kid. It's cool. I have his book, and his book is literally something unique when it comes to necromancy. And even he puts in things on death, destruction rites, consecration rites. And I had an individual who also recommended banishings and exorcisms, doing both, because a lot of times that they are linked together, especially if you're doing a ceremonial rite in this fashion. You want to cleanse yourself in your home, in your ritual space, after you've removed that object from your home or from that ritual ground. Okay? But at the same time, you want to exorcise through an exorcism anything that is attached to you, severing that cord, just severing that cord. Very, very interesting fact. And this individual was correct on that aspect. You do want to separate that cord. You do want to do it on both fronts. It's not just a closing of the gate. You've also got to sever that cord. Basically, a term like be it done. So it be done. So it be finished. Go. Do your thing. I'm done. We're done. Okay? Something like this allows the spirit to know, okay, it's time for me to go. You petition me, you give me the correct sacrifice, the correct offering. You petition me for my help. So now that you've acknowledged that this rite is now finished, I'm going to go do my thing. Have a good night. A good day. Whatever time you choose to do that rite, and who, the time of day, the hour, the day of the week really goes into effect. You got your planetary statures going in, like for an example, Saturn if you're doing curses, Jupiter if you're doing, or Venus if you're doing hexes. And I would recommend literally Mars or say, for an example, Mercury, if you're doing anything to do with jinxes, being that warrior, because your iron intent is something that you're putting forth there. Venus is the mother, you know, the feminine divine. So you're really looking at it from a planetary aspect here. And this is why. When you think of a mother, when you think of a female as a mother, what is her duty? She is a nurturer, but she is also a teacher, a discipliner. Okay? So right here, you're utilizing that aspect, especially if you're doing hexcraft. You're teaching that individual a lesson. But like I said, you want to decide what level. Do you want to play the psychological game? Do you want to just simply say, okay, I'm not going to get into this with you, but hey, since you're here, this was my dealings with this person. This is what these people's encounters was with this individual. Okay. And, or do you want to get into the physical supernatural aspect and literally get into the curses themselves? Those are the three things that I would recommend to you. But I would recommend using zodiacs. I would recommend using the consecrated circles. I would recommend using everything at your disposal if you intend to do harm to somebody. Okay? Do not have any sense of remorse or guilt by doing them, because that whole threefold law thing means that it will come back on you at that point. But if you have done your job correctly, you've severed that cord from the spell in that individual, then you can move on freely. But if your client is the one that hired you and that person decides, hey, can you undo that? We've made amends, feel a little guilty by doing that. Well, guess what? You, as the practitioner, you're not held reliable, because that spell will go from that person and latch it onto the client. Okay? That's how that works. More so, if you're going to get into baneful sorcery, use the tools. Use the tools, do your homework. How is black magic used? How was this type of sorcery utilized throughout the eons? Like I said, you have poisons, you have herbs and powders, you have spell work, you have supernatural means. More so, look at the groups that were associated and accused of devil worship. In fact, look at witchcraft in general. If you go back throughout the burning times, the witch trials from the 11th century forward, you'll notice something, that it wasn't about a holocaust, even though thousands of witches were burned at the stake, hung, or drowned, tortured even. It was somebody trying to get rid of an opponent, an obstacle. It was literally a power play for power. Most of the time, it was put into effect by the church, which again was associated with the state, meaning government. If you look at the 16th century forward to around the 17th century, even the 18th century, you're going to notice that a lot of it was about healing. It was about aiding people in their ills. But those few who went against that and were actually trying to hurt people, they were the ones that was accused. The first one was imprisonment. The second time was death. You look at Great Britain. Okay, their laws, parliament laws, what's surrounding witchcraft was put in place numerous times. But if you get into the Western and the Eastern philosophies, you'll see a huge difference. Even if even if you go into the European versus African Caribbean traditions, you're going to see difference of opinions, different methods, different eulogies within their intents. That's why it always pays for you to back up what you preach and always make yourself available to the public. Because that way, the world will see you compared to one of these asshats that are simply out there to create drama. Don't get the two mixed up. Because when you do your own homework, you do your own work and you put the time and energy and intent into your work, you're going to know the difference between a fake and a real. Somebody that's only in it for popularity, numbers, and, say, for example, money. And that of somebody who's actually doing the work, knowing and backing up what they've mastered, what they have practiced. I believe it was Bokor Leonard Imera who said it best. It was a video that he put forth, I want to say it was a few months ago. And it was a question that was put forth to him. Is Bokor magic more powerful than those of the white? Meaning the Hangan, the Mambo, the Papa, the Mama, depending if you're in Haitian or Dominican Republican voodoo, or the Bokor with a C, which is like a witch doctor. Okay, the Babalawi, those in the council, the high council, the high priesthood. Okay, if you look at this, there's an old expression. Number one, if Bondi or Bondi, as it's pronounced, doesn't want you to do that, you're not going to be able to do that magic. But the difference between a Bokor and one of these others is they're mastering everything. They're mastering the arts, they're mastering alchemy, they're mastering herbalism because they're constantly studying, they're constantly growing, they're constantly maturing within their practices. These others are only in it for popularity. They're only in it for numbers. And if you look on social media, a lot of these people that are claiming to be practitioners, they're not putting the work or time in. They're literally in it for this. That's it. That's all it is. So they'll do whatever they have to do. They'll slander you, make up false accusations. Goes back 300-400 years. 300-400 years. You can see this through the burning times. You can see this through the witch trials. You can see this through through the literally the witch trials, the trials of where they were tormented and words put into their mouth because they were being tortured. And wouldn't you agree with somebody if they were torturing you? Think about that. But if you're going to curse somebody, choose when and where to do it. And if you suddenly wake up one day and you go out your door and you see eggshells, yellow powdered eggshells across your doorway, get rid of it. Disarm it. Get rid of it because that means somebody has cursed you. Okay? And that's just voodoo. If you find a mojo bag, a grist, upon a path that you frequent, or it's someplace around your home, either underneath your window, left hidden within your home, that means somebody that you trust is trying to betray you, trying to curse you. But you got to remember, if you're going to do this stuff, you got to set that link If you put a grist bag in the ground on a trail that your enemy frequents, make sure that you don't give two shits what happens to anybody else that frequents that trail. Because that spell, that grist bag, that mojo bag, is going to affect them as well. And this is something that you can see throughout history. You look at the pandemic of fear. You go back into the late 80s, early 90s, the satanic panic, and you see this because of Charles Manson and his family and how they butchered people. Wherever people looked, they saw a Satanist. And that Satanist was behind every single crime that the mundane do. It's fear. But you got to know what you're talking about. You got to back it up. So look into that. Okay? Look into all of these things. Because when you know the laws, I would recommend, like E.A. Quetting did in the video I watched last night, and I can actually look that video up right now and just let you know what it was. From what I understand, it was like back in January, if I remember correctly. Okay. And that was Cult Classics 3, Baneful Magic was the name of that. And it's roughly, let me get rid of that real fast, about 2 years ago, actually. So I was wrong. It was not January. It was 2 years ago. That video was with J.S. Garrett and E.A. Quetting himself. Very, very interesting discussion. They discussed numerous different points of view of this. Some of which I agreed with. Others, not so much, but it was there. But anybody who gets into black magic, sorcery, gets into cursing, they're going to do their homework. They're going to get into all of this stuff. They're not going to care what happens to you if they decide to curse you. But they're also going to think, is this person worth my curse? Is this person worth my time? Especially if they're already going to defeat themselves through their own words and their own deeds. That's the thing you got to decide. This old adversary, I can care less if he's talking smack about me. Because everything he's still putting forth has already been disproven last year in a video. He has no leg to stand on. But yet he brought my name through his lips. People are still hung up on that event. I read it to you right here from Facebook. The mark of Cain was a biblical thing. Catherine Petit just put, she posted this a little bit ago. And yes, I did notice you did that. The mark of Cain was given to Cain because he killed his brother. And he was worried that people were going to kill him out of retribution. So the mark was to let people know that if any intent or harm went on him, the same would be done to them. But then again, if you look at it, the flood already took place. So, soon after that, the great flood with Noah. Humorous, really. So you really got to get into that. And yes, even Hollywood jumped in on that one as well with, I believe it was Supernatural seasons, what was it? I want to say 8, I think. 8, 9. When they did the Knights of Hell aspect and made Cain a demon, the founder of the Knights of Hell. Yes, I've seen that TV show. A lot of mythology there. They had a lot correct, but also so much wrong. A lot of it was just exaggerated. That's Hollywood for you. Don't tell the whole truth, just a small portion. So basically, the mark of Cain became known as a curse. That's all that was. There is no record throughout mythology, history, or anything that shows that the mark of Cain was a real thing. Therefore, it's a fictional. It's a biblical thing. The spirit known as Azazel, for an example, was known as the scapegoat. If you go into the Yom Kippur text of Jewish in Hebrew, you will notice that this was a ritual of idol worship, in a sense. It was also an animal sacrifice. One would be butchered, the spotless, because it wasn't going to be sacrificed to Allah. It was going to be sacrificed to Yazad. It was going to be sacrificed to the Jehovah, okay? Yahweh. It was unblemished. It was perfect. The blood was put in a mason jar, or their version of a jar. The intestines were removed and put on the altar so that aroma could boil in the sun. That those organs could be boiling in the sun. The carcass itself was burned, and supposedly it turned on their god. He liked that aroma. This is in the book of Leviticus, by the way, and you can look it up underneath the burnt offerings. If you get into the study of their altar, the Israel altar, okay, setup, you'll notice how this all played into effect for their belief structure. But in the Yom Kippur, this other goat, the blemished goat, was sent out into the desert. At least that's the way the Christians tell it, okay? Which is not the whole truth, okay? In fact, the way this ritual was is at certain intervals down a rocky terrain where the rocks were so sharp, it would slice through cartilage. It would slice through the skin, the muscles, the cartilage, and it's a very bloody and violent manner type ritual. And if you look at this, you'd have people standing at certain intervals to report back on how far that animal got before it could no longer continue. Think of it like the gladiators of ancient Rome, the Colosseum fights. That's basically what it was. Because the people would not choose between the devil or Azazel and that of Yahweh. So it became known as casting lots. The mark of Cain was similar in this aspect because Azazel became known as Cain. He became known as the devil. And yet, if anybody goes back into, say, the political text, you'll know that Satan, this is a 16th century document, by the way, it was where Satan was actually replaced. He replaced Beelzebub, the Lord of the Sabbath, the witch's Sabbath. And a lot of people assume that Satan was that being. You go back into the Talmud, you'll notice that, or the Mishra, the Jewish Haggadah, and you'll notice that Satan was an archangel. He was not an archangel, he was a Gorgorai. He was a watcher angel. You go back into the books of Enoch, and you'll notice that Azazel was the one that stole knowledge from the gods and gave this power to mankind. He gave mankind knowledge, like Prometheus gave mankind fire. They were punished for it. They were punished for helping mankind survive. But yet, if you go back into the Jewish Haggadah and you go into the Mishra, you'll notice that Zazazel made a deal with a much older angel, Simyaza, a much older, supposedly the prince of a evil entity, of the old gods. And supposedly he led the tens to their downfall, because the story goes that they looked down and saw the daughters of men and how they were born onto them, and they bore them angels after they took them as wives. So again, they were punished, punished for their association with mankind. You look at the mark of Cain, prime example right there. Out of spite, out of jealousy, he murdered his brother because he was favorable of their God. Same exact thing, same shit, just another story. You go back into the scroll of Amri, out of the Dead Sea Scrolls. You're going to see the sons and daughters of Belial, against Michael, the archangel, the prince, he who is like God today in Hebrew, the soul collector in cuneiform, face of love in Sanskrit. Everything changes over time because it gets corrupted. But you got to remember that the stories are told by the victors, not those of the losers. The reason that people like me are hated is because we give you that knowledge. We give you that truth. We give you the tools to arm yourself. You look at E.A. Koenig. You look at J.S. Garrett and his wife. You look at Orley Stewart and J.D. Temple. You look at anyone like Curtis Joseph, who is a teacher and a guide. You look at Behemoth X. He's been mocked. V.K. Jehannam's been mocked. He's been hated. But what do? They just simply look at you as an idiot, a child, because you're lashing out with malicious rumors with nothing to back up. And when it's already been disproven, what leg do you have to stand on? You've cursed yourself through your own deeds. You've cursed yourself through your own words. So why would a black magician, a sorcerer, turn around and curse you and continue cursing you? You've done it to yourself. And you'd be surprised how often that actually happens. More so, if I did curse somebody, you'd be dead, and they would not be here to tell their story. Not mentioning running around spreading malicious rumors. The way I look at it, it's a win-win for me. Your actions showed the world exactly who you are. Your words defeated you. You defeated yourself either way. Oops. Sucks to be you. But as for me, I'm a teacher, guide, educator, and a spiritualist. Just like these others I've named off. They have no interest in your drama. They have no interest in the worldly things. Because while you're out there trying to make a name for yourself, while you're going out there and trying to create numbers and becoming popular, we're over here doing what we do best. We're researching. We're mastering the arcane, the arts, and we're doing the time through dedication and commitment, putting the work in. This is why we exist. And people like these that spread malicious rumors and hate and malcontent don't last very long. But if you want to do baneful sorcery, know the difference. Create that link between you and that effigy and that target. For an example, if you take a voodoo doll, and I'm going to put this one out there because I found this one very truthful, and it was done by a voodooist out of New Orleans to a reporter. He pulled out a voodoo doll, took the lady's engagement ring, and put it in. He put it in the voodoo doll and started putting pins in certain locations. The lady realized that she could not move. She could not speak. She was completely helpless. Very interesting, because what he did was he took the effigy, in this case a voodoo doll, a personalized item of that individual, such as a wedding ring, a photo, lock of hair, and put it as a link to her. But as it wasn't until he explained everything that she realized right here, right here is where that came from. It was on her part. If you tell people that, say, for example, you cannot move, it would be like telling a child that they're in timeout in a corner. They won't move. Do not say a word. They won't say a word. It's that psychological command because of society. It's their rules. But the one thing you have to understand is that the spiritual laws do not apply to the physical, and the physical laws do not apply to the spiritual. There's a reason why they're separate. There's a reason why, if you want to weaken something, you go into the astral to weaken it in the physical. This is nothing more than a prison to prevent you from rising, from speaking your mind, from doing the work. It's called fear tactic. That's all it is. Don't approach that person because they've done this, 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 and this. You ask anybody about me on social media, you're going to get two different variations. One, he curses everybody. He's unstable. But on the other hand, you're going to see people go, he's one hell of a library. Guy's got so much knowledge. He helped me. He's a good priest, a good spiritual guide. He knows his shit. Because it's something that you've earned. It's because you've earned it. But it comes down to you. You want to take the easy way? Or do you want to earn it? You know, yesterday I was online and I found out that Orly Stewart just got her ordination as a reverend. Or what was it, a reverend? I want to say bishop, I think. I think it was a bishop. I congratulated her on it. I've seen her videos. I've watched her videos. I've seen her rituals that she performs. She has earned that title. She didn't go out and just go, I'm going to get into this field and say, oh, by the way, I'm the Black Pope. No. She worked her way up the food chain to that title, just like I did, just like VK did, just like Curtis Joseph has done, just like E.A. Koetting has done, just like J.S. Garrett and his wife has done. We've earned the titles that we wear. We didn't do it the easy way. It's taken me 32 years to get to where I am. I have been an ordained minister since 2013. That's over 20 years in the field of practice, study, of dedicated, committed work. Repetition is a prime key. Back up what you preach. Make yourself available to the public and do the work. Know what you're speaking on. Have a good one.